The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, it's all yours.
Okay, great. Okay, well, welcome. Welcome to the webinar on Social Security benefits for persons with disabilities. I'd just like to introduce myself. My name is Adrienne Arkontaky. I am the managing partner of the White Plains office of the Cuddy Law Firm, and we have offices in White Plains, New York, in Auburn, New York, and also we assist people throughout the state, so we have office space in New York City. My practice focuses on accessing government benefits, helping families with loved ones with disabilities access government benefits. We also focus on guardianship, special needs planning, estate planning, special needs trusts, Medicaid appeals, and various other aspects of special needs planning and special education, advocacy, and litigation. So we represent families who have children with disabilities that are served by the school systems throughout New York State. On a personal note, I just let everyone know that I do have a child with a young adult right now with disabilities who does have a seizure disorder. So personally and professionally, I appreciate the challenges that everyone does go through, and hopefully by the end of the webinar, you will have an overview of how to access some government benefits and some other. We'll address some other issues also. So I'm going to start, and we can go to the first slide. So we're just waiting for the first slide to come up. And we can just move along to the first explanation.
It's on.
So many people with disabilities are eligible for benefits through the Social Security program, and there are various programs. When you do apply for benefits through the Social Security Administration, you do not have to designate one program. I think that's really important for families to know. Some are means-tested programs, meaning that you have to have a limited amount of resources and income, and others are not dependent on the amount of income or assets that you have. So we will talk about how to access these programs and what you should do. The programs are designed to provide an individual with disabilities with the basic necessities of life, including food, shelter, and health care. In New York State, if you receive $1 of supplemental security income, you are eligible for Medicaid. So when we talk about health care, we'll talk about the component to some of these programs that does afford an individual with disabilities access to health care. So with that, we'll go to the next slide.
It's on.
Let's do one more. Okay, thank you. The programs through the Social Security Administration are grouped into two categories. There are needs-based programs, as we talked about, such as supplemental security income and Medicaid. And these programs are available to individuals with disabilities who satisfy certain needs-based requirements related to assets and income. So what does that all mean? It means that a person with disabilities who will be eligible for what's called SSI and Medicaid must have limited resources, limited money in the bank, a limit to the amount of CDs that per se a person has. And right now in New York State, in order to qualify for this needs-based program, you can only have, the individual can only have no more than $2,000 in assets. So if you have a bank account with $2,000.01, you will not qualify. So it's important that everyone recognize this. It's a program that is based on the the amount of money that you have. And the other thing is that it's based on the amount of income, because remember, what the Social Security Administration is offering is a program for folks that because of their disability cannot work or cannot work for a substantial amount of time. The threshold is about $1,000 a month. So if you're making more than that, then there might be an issue, and there usually will be an issue, to access SSI and or Medicaid, because the threshold is saying you cannot work full-time because of your disability. I want everyone to remember that epilepsy is a qualifying diagnosis under the Social Security rules. So you've met the qualifying diagnosis, but you have to still prove that because of the disability, you have some limitations on work. As far as Medicaid, once again, Medicaid as combined with the SSI, Supplemental Security Income, means that if you receive $1 of SSI in the state of New York, you will qualify automatically for Medicaid. Now, and we can talk about this a little later on, but you can apply for Medicaid separately. And the threshold, the amount of resources that you can have if you were applying for Medicaid without SSI is a little bit more. So you can have about $14,800, and you have to check because these figures do change in order to receive Medicaid. So someone that might not be eligible for SSI could still qualify for Medicaid. That will not give you the stipend, meaning the money every month that is afforded by SSI, but it will in fact give you the health care coverage. It should be noted that Medicaid is a payer of last resort. It means that the providers are going to look at every other available medical insurance first, and then they will bill Medicaid. So, it becomes a little bit complicated, but you should, if you take anything away from this, it should be that these programs are available and you should look into them. Then there is another program that is not needs-based. You don't have to have, you could be a millionaire in order to access this program. And it's social insurance programs such as Social Security and SSDI, which is Social Security Disability, and Medicare. These programs are available regardless of how much income or assets you may have. These benefits become available because of the amounts you paid into the Social Security system. It is based on your work history. So when you look at your paychecks and you see that some of this is being is Social Security being withheld, you'll know that that's your reserve. So if you work for what they call 40 quarters or approximately 10 years, and if you're under 32, the amount of time that you have to work is typically a little less. But if you do work that amount of time, and you can work that amount of time not all at one time. So you may work for 2 years and be out of work for a year, and then work 3 years and be out of work for a year. It is cumulative. So if you have this work history, regardless of the amount of resources you have, you could have $100,000 in the bank, you will be able generally to qualify for this program. So once again, you're going to access these benefits by going to the Social Security Administration and giving all your information, and then Social Security will then decide which program you're eligible for. So with that, we'll go to the next slide. And it just may take a minute for us to access The next slide. So who operates these programs? Some programs are operated by the federal government, and some are operated by the states, and others are jointly funded by the federal government and the states. And what happens is that sometimes when you go to the Social Security Administration, you'll get a check, and it will be partially federal money, and the partial funds will come from the state, so there might be a supplement. And it's just nice for you to know where the source of these funds are coming from, because, you know, as we know, in the climate we live in, there are a lot of budgetary cuts, and so you want to know where you should be lobbying. So, you know, just so you have some background information. With that, we'll go to the next slide. Okay, some basic rules. If your disability occurred before reaching the age of 22, the Social Security benefits become available at different times. They become available when you or your spouse die, you reach retirement age, or you become disabled. Right? This is for Social Security. If your child developed a disability after age 22, Social Security will become available only if your child had a significant employment history before becoming disabled. And that's what we just talked about. Social Security benefits outside of some supplemental security income are only available to an individual if they have a work history, or B, what we call the survivor or a spouse of someone that collects Social Security. So, in fact, if you have a disability or your child has a disability, you could, in fact, collect on someone else's record. You cannot do that with SSI. But with Social Security benefits, which includes Social Security and Social Security disability income, as a disabled individual, you may be able to collect these benefits if you are collecting on someone else's record. So you may be able to collect on your parents' Social Security record if you are in fact disabled. So with that, we'll go to the next slide. And it'll take a minute just to flip the slide. So additional basic rules. If you have limited income and assets and you're disabled, you're likely to be entitled to SSI, Supplemental Security Income, upon reaching the age of 18. And the reason that you, as a disabled individual or an individual with disabilities, will be able to collect at 18 is because prior to you achieving the age of 18, your parents' income and your parents' resources would have been considered when determining whether you are eligible for this benefit. But something happens at 18. You become an emancipated adult, meaning that Social Security is going to look at your assets and your income because you are now an adult in the eyes of the law. So what I tell families typically is that when your child is approaching the age of 18, if they have a disability, a month prior to the time that they are turning 18, you should talk about whether they will qualify for SSI if they in fact need assistance and you do not believe that they can sustain full-time gainful employment and may need additional assistance. For some lower income families, because they don't have the income and resources, children under the age of 18 may also be eligible. The threshold is very, very low. You need to be have a very, very low income for those children to qualify, But if you are, in fact, in that group, you should go to the Social Security website. It doesn't hurt to call and see what the, what the limits are and apply. But absolutely, when that individual is attaining the age of 18, you should start to look at these benefits. Because remember, these benefits provide sort of a stopgap where maybe what happens is that you have insurance and you have some supports, but you need additional supports. I'm going to just ask the slide flipped one too many, so if we could go back one. I just want to talk a little bit about if you are eligible for supplemental security income benefits, you will likely be eligible for Medicaid. So again, you want to look at these, a combination of these benefits to make sure that you're exploring all of them. If we can go to the next slide, that would be great. Okay, important thing to understand. If you are eligible, if you have been eligible for Social Security benefits for at least 2 years, you will likely be eligible for Medicare. It doesn't matter if you actually receive the benefits, just that the eligibility requirements were satisfied. So this is how, I'm going to give you an example of how this plays out. So you have epilepsy and you have been working for a few years, but the seizures are now interfering with your ability to work. You have a substantial work history. You go to the Social Security Administration and you apply for Social Security disability benefits. And or your parent receives Social Security and you are collecting on their record. But you apply and for some reason you don't collect right away. 2 years after you've been determined to be eligible for those benefits, you will likely generally be eligible for Medicare, which is a more comprehensive health care coverage than Medicaid. And in fact, what would happen, even if you have private insurance, Medicare would be the first payer, then the private health insurance. And if you are Medicaid eligible, then you would be eligible for Medicaid. But again, important to remember, just because you didn't collect the benefit and just because you didn't even apply but you were eligible, that's what starts the 2-year time frame. So it's important to keep track, and it's important to know this, because when you go to Social Security, you want to have that eligibility as quickly as possible. So with that, let's go to the next slide. Okay, how do we establish eligibility? So in order for you to qualify for any of the benefits that I spoke about, you will need to be considered to have a disability within the rules of the Social Security system. So I'll give you sort of the general theory about how to qualify. So the Social Security regulations define disability as the inability to do any substantial gainful activity by reason of any medically determinable physical or mental impairment which can be expected to last for a continuous period of not less than 12 months. So if you have a diagnosis and you expect that this will all resolve itself within 6 months, that is not a good enough reason to collect these benefits. However, with things like epilepsy or some other impairments, this is expected to last a lifetime. And that's why epilepsy is a qualifying diagnosis. But you have to then say to yourself, will this diagnosis affect my ability to work for more than 12 months? And I give you the section of the law that talks about this. But keep in your mind, if you're going to apply for these benefits, that this is something that is supposed to aid or give support to a person who has been determined to be disabled for more than 12 months. Now, that's not to say that if you can go back to work, that you can do that. And perhaps maybe then you put the benefit on hold, and we'll talk a little bit about the programs that are available if, in fact, it's been determined that, you know, you can go back to work. So with that, we'll go to the next slide. Okay, what does the evaluation process look like? All right, the Social Security Administration must determine whether the person with a disability is able to earn more than a threshold amount, and it's about $1,000 a month, which increases each year to account for inflation, and that's why I don't put an amount down. There's a 5-step analysis when the Social Security Administration looks at the application. Is the person working? So if the person is working and they're working a full-time job, there's going to be a red flag right there. Because, again, what the purpose of the benefit is to provide support for folks that can't work. Does the disability significantly limit the person's ability to do basic work? For example, like walking, sitting, seeing, and remembering. You know, if you're in a position where you need to look over legal briefs and the disability is affecting your ability to remember or retain what you've learned, then that's going to add to a decision that you're not able to work in your field. If the person's medical condition is considered severe, the Social Security Administration will look at a list of disabling impairments to consider automatic qualification. So just as I said, epilepsy is an automatic qualification, but you still have to make the link. If the person's medical condition is severe, but it's not on the list, the Social Security Administration will examine further when the person can possibly work in the future based on past work history. If none of the above criteria are met, the Social Security Administration will consider whether the disability will affect the person's ability to sustain work at the substantial gainful employment level in the future. So with all this, what Social Security is going to do, it's going to take a snapshot of where the person is right now, whether they believe that the person will be able to work long-term, whether they will not be able to work long-term more than a year. That's sort of the threshold. And there are, you know, exceptions. So in many cases, you have to make your case. So with that, let's go to the next slide. Okay, the common reasons for failing to qualify. This is important. The single most common reason for failing to qualify for benefits is a failure to submit information sufficient to permit the Social Security Administration to make a determination that a person has a disability within the scope of the SSA rules. So you have to give the Social Security Administration good evaluations. You have to talk to your doctor. So if you have an advocacy organization, which you all do, the doctors are familiar with the forms that Social Security asks to be completed. And they'll know how to really advocate and articulate why the person can't work, what are the disabilities, what what diagnoses are present that prevent the applicant from working. So that's important, and that is one of the main reasons that folks do not get approved on the first round, because they're not giving the Social Security Administration everything that the administration needs to make a favorable determination. If possible, a physician should review the definition describing your disability as set forth in the regulations to make sure the report contains the language that Social Security requires. So if you look back, and I have articulated to you what the threshold is, you can bring the presentation or you can bring some of the information from Social Security and make sure that your doctor is articulating correctly. With that, we can go to the next slide. Okay, Social Security Disability Insurance, which is called SSDI. And we've talked a little bit about it, but let's make sure everybody understands what it means. It's one of the two primary cash benefit programs. You're going to get a check every month. And it's generally available for workers who became disabled prior to attaining the age of 65 if the worker's work history satisfies the SSA requirements. And this benefit, you don't have to be disabled before the age of 22. It can happen any time during your lifetime prior to the age 65. And it's also available to children, even adult children, of retired, disabled, or deceased Social Security participants if the child had a disability that developed before the child reached the age of 22. So, and this is how, again, it plays out. Your parent retires, and he's 70. He's going to get Social Security, and you yourself have epilepsy, which was diagnosed prior to the age of 22. You would collect on his record or her record. So, again, and you would get a check every month that is issued from the Social Security Administration but is attributed as an SSDI benefit. So with that, let's go to the next slide. Okay, the benefit is based on the parent's work record. So, and these are just generally how the benefit works. The parent is retired or disabled, the benefit is 1/2 of the parent's benefit. It does not reduce the parent's benefit, but if the parent is getting $1,000 a month, the child would get $500. However, I do want to say that generally, if there's more than one person collecting on the parent's benefit, their benefits, the two children, would be reduced because it is a cumulative total. So their benefits may be reduced if there's more than one person collecting, but the parent's benefit is not reduced. If the parent is deceased, the benefit is 3/4 of the parent's benefit. And the benefits may be reduced, as I said, if more than one person receives benefits based on the parent's work histories. And they will cease. This is an important thing to remember if a person marries someone who's not entitled to SSA benefits. So if a disabled adult child collects on his father's benefit and he's receiving $500 a month, and he marries someone who is not collecting Social Security, disability, or any other benefit from the Social Security Administration, generally the benefit will cease. So with that, we'll go to the next page. Okay. The second program that we'll talk about is SSI, Supplemental Security Income. And we took an overview, but let's talk a little bit more about it. The Supplemental Security Income Program, SSI, is a needs-based program, and it's designed to supplement the income of people who are elderly, blind, or disabled and lack sufficient resources to provide for their own needs. And the needs that it's supposed to provide for are really food and shelter. The program provides a monthly cash stipend, and it's typically no more than about $800, and the disability must be determined in the same manner as SSDI. So the way the Social Security Administration would determine whether a person is eligible for SSI is the same way they would determine whether someone is eligible for SSDI. There is no requirement that the disability occur before age 22. So if you're looking for an SSI benefit, it is a needs-based program. So you can't have more than $2,000 in the bank. You can't be making more than generally $1,000 every month. So it's really for our most needy individuals. With that, we'll go to the next page. Okay. There are limits on income and resources. There is a deeming of income and resources. That means that prior to the age of 18, if a family wants to apply for SSI for their child and that child is 16, the Social Security Administration, once again, will look at the income and assets of the family. In addition, if the individual applying for SSI is applying after age 18 and they are living home or the parents are providing some support, there is a deeming. The Social Security Administration does look at what supports are in place and may reduce the benefit according to how much support is being given. So a portion of the income and resources will be generally considered available to your child if your child lives with you and is under the age of 18. But as it says here, once the child reaches 18, the parents and assets are no longer considered available, but there is a reduction in benefits for certain situations. So if you are over the age of 18 and you're living with someone who provides support, and it's called in-kind support, pays your rent, pays for your food, then the benefit may be reduced. So with that, we'll go to the next slide. Okay, Medicare. There is a federal health insurance program run by the Social Security Administration. It is designed to pay the cost of health care for people over the age of 65 and for people with disabilities who are under the age of 65 and have been eligible to receive Social Security benefits for at least 2 years, or who need kidney dialysis treatments or kidney transplant. The individual must only be eligible and they don't have to receive the benefit, they just have to be eligible. And many people can have sort of this hierarchy of benefits. So if you take a person who has a work history and is receiving SSDI, they will get Medicare, but if they don't make enough money each month, may also get SSI and Medicaid. So you can have potentially an individual receiving SSDI, Medicare, Medicaid, SSI, and even, say, food stamps and private insurance. But our goal today is to identify the benefits and apply for everything, just so that you have layers of coverage. So with that, we'll go to the next slide. Okay, so in conclusion, and then I do want to talk about one other area that I think is very, very important. It's important to assess the need for a government program as early as possible. You want to look at what's available, get the applications in, make sure that you are identifying the needs. If you are receiving benefits through SSDI and or SSI, you want to make sure that you keep the monies that you receive in separate accounts. It's very important because at the end of the year, typically you have to do an accounting of the monies that you have spent because SSI money should be spent, and even SSDI money, on the essentials first, because these are the funds that you want to use first before you go to any other funds. And so one of the the gems that I say to take away from this is, if you do apply for the benefit, make sure when you set up these accounts you set them up separately. Typically there are people called representative payees, so if you need someone to help you manage the money, you can have the account set up with 2 people, one of whom would be a representative payee. And then every month you'll get a check, and you will deposit that money in this account and write checks off of there. It's imperative to explore all potential benefits according to the needs of the individual. It's imperative that you work with advocacy organizations and doctors and other professionals to obtain appropriate documentation. That is, I cannot stress enough, because what could potentially happen is if you put the application in, you don't have the correct documentation, it may affect your ability to get the benefit right away. And then what you'll be forced to do is if the application is denied, you have to initiate an appeal. And you don't want to have to do that. The appeals take a long time generally, and you don't want to be waiting for the benefit any more or any longer than you really have to. So I always advise, make sure that you work with people, work with an organization that could assist you in completing the application. I will say that the Social Security Administration has an incredible website, and the information is very easy to understand. It provides a wealth of information. They have this, I think it's called the Red Book, and you can download it. And there's, many, books that are available on that website. Some of the questions, if we were doing a live presentation that do come up, so I'll take some time to address them now, is that what happens if you want to apply for these benefits, but you also want to explore your opportunities to work, but you're faced with what happens if I find something and then I'm going to lose all these benefits. So in years past, individuals would be hard-pressed to go and look for work because they would be so afraid that their job wouldn't work out and then they wouldn't have the benefit. Well, the Social Security Administration these days does want to support an individual's quest to find work. So they have set up programs such as Ticket to Work and something called the PASS program. Now, a description of those programs is really outside the scope of this presentation, but I encourage everybody to look at those two programs within the Social Security Administration, because what will happen is if you do qualify for the benefits, but you want to explore working, you sort of can take a hiatus from the SSI or SSDI benefits or Social Security benefits and go to work for a little bit. And the rules change, but you should look at these programs, because Social Security will work with you. Sometimes what they'll do is they'll allow you to work for, say, 9 months, and then you'll talk to them and see how it's going, and they'll allow you during that time to still collect the benefit, still have SSI, and still have Medicaid, but you'll touch base with them. You'll go to a meeting and you'll talk about whether this is working out. So it will eliminate the fear of losing the benefit that people were faced with years ago. The next thing that I think is really important, and I'll take a little bit of time to talk about this, is the importance of good estate planning and the importance of having advance directives. And I always tell this story that my oldest daughter was turning 18, and we sent her off to college. And we live in Westchester, New York, and she goes to college in Buffalo, and winds up, because of some dental work that she had done, in the emergency room. Because she was 18, the doctors would not speak to me unless she had given authorization, and this was several years ago, and the cell service wasn't as good as it is now, and we were scrambling around to get a hold of her in order to have her provide the doctor with authorization to speak to us. That should not, and today would not happen, because it is imperative for everyone 18 years of age or older to sign advance directives. And those advanced directives are what I consider important, and they are a healthcare proxy, a power of attorney, and a HIPAA release. There are a few other documents you can sign, but those are the big three. And everyone 18 years or older should have them. And basically what happens is that you will designate individuals who you would give the authority to act if you could no longer act, and or individuals that will have access to your information. So how does this help you? Well, it helps you because if you're going to apply for Social Security or any of the benefit programs, maybe you need help in filling out the application. Maybe you want somebody to call and ask the questions. That power of attorney, that HIPAA release, that healthcare proxy are the documents that you can provide to the Social Security Administration that say, I give my mother, my father, my spouse, my brother, my sister, my friend the authority to access my information and or act on my behalf. So if you take away anything from this presentation, one or two things, it's to explore the possibility of completing those advanced directives and getting them done as soon as possible. The other thing that is really crucial, especially if you have a family member who has a disability and you want to provide for their long-term care, is to consider whether you should, in your in your last will and testament, establish a special needs trust. Special needs trust, when properly done, will preserve the individual's ability to access government benefits, but create a trust so that they can, in fact, have some money that a trustee will be in charge of, but will be available. Those funds will be available for that individual's care over and above what Medicaid and any of the Social Security programs will provide for. And for many families, you want to make sure that that trust is established in a way that it is, you're sure that it does not affect the government benefits or jeopardize the person's right to government benefits. And that, again, is the sort of outside the scope of this presentation, but I, strongly urge everyone to evaluate the need for this, this type of estate planning. I always tell families that if you are going to work with somebody on any estate planning issues, any preparation of advanced directives, and anyone that is going to help with access to government benefits, it's important to work with someone that does this every single day, not someone that just, they've done a special needs trust every once in a while, or they have worked with families with disabilities occasionally. I strongly suggest that you work with a professional that does this every day in their practice, because you don't want to have to deal with the problem because the estate planning documents were not done properly, or they did not suggest that advanced directives be done, or they haven't had experience with assisting with completing Social Security applications. So it's really crucial. There are some additional resources that you can access. One of them is the Social Security Administration website, which is www.ssa.gov. Again, a really great website. Once you get on it, you'll see it's really reader-friendly. The other website that is great is the State Department of Health website, which is www.health.state.ny.us. And I encourage you, if you're in New York State, to look at these two websites. Certainly, I am always available whenever I do these webinars or whenever I do presentations. You can certainly email me questions because we don't have the luxury today of having a question and answer period. I'm happy after you listen to this to email me at arkontaky@cuddylawfirm.com, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. You can also reach me at 914-984-2740, and I'll be happy to talk to you about any questions that you might have. So with that, I thank you very much for your time, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation.